Breaking news, and Prince Andrew has announced that he is relinquishing his royal titles.
She must have run out of people. She did run out of people because that's why she was tapping up Epstein all the time.
President Trump weighed in on the whole Andrew scandal overnight.
So damaging about this email is that it actually highlights the cynicism in which she's approached this.
A swift number of charities that came forward very quickly in a short amount of time to distance themselves from Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York.
Ex-wife and fellow resident Sarah Ferguson pours out her heart to staff at a secret bar called the Doghouse.
I think the problem is the level of connection that Andrew seems to have to these bears.
The terms of Prince Andrew's lease on Royal Lodge state explicitly that as long as he maintains the upkeep of the property and completes necessary repairs and renovations, he remains within his legal rights to occupy the residence. Therefore, it has proven extraordinarily difficult to remove him or force him to relocate, despite mounting pressure from King Charles and the palace establishment. But behind the grand walls of Royal Lodge, life for staff working under Andrew and Sarah Ferguson was far from the polished, dignified image the public once saw and believed. New accounts from former employees are revealing a tense household marked by strict and often bizarre rules, unpredictable outbursts, and a suffocating demand for absolute control over every minor detail. Now, with Andrew stripped of all royal titles and honours and formally ordered to leave Royal Lodge, these stories have taken on new and troubling meaning. They offer a genuinely disturbing glimpse into the environment that existed behind those palace gates for decades and reveal the power dynamic between the former Duke and Duchess of York that staff found increasingly difficult to navigate. Those who work directly for Prince Andrew describe him consistently as difficult, short-tempered, and often openly rude to staff members regardless of their seniority or years of service. One former palace maid stated that while other members of the royal household maintained formal but fundamentally kind relationships with staff, Andrew stood out dramatically for his impatience and sense of entitlement. She claimed staff were often genuinely terrified to make even minor mistakes, knowing that a trivial error, whether a curtain drawn too tightly or a breakfast tray positioned slightly off-center, could trigger an angry and humiliating response. Prince Andrew is being stripped of his prince title entirely, a move that shocked many royal watchers. But the question many are asking is why now, after years of controversy?
Buckingham Palace says that King Charles has started the process to strip Prince Andrew of his title.
Is Fergie really finally clearing off?
He's living in disgrace. He was stripped of his royal duties, and part of that is he's not really being paid by the monarchy anymore because he doesn't complete any royal duty.
And there's the worry about security, that apparently she's very, very paranoid at the moment, and she thinks she'll be targeted, or maybe Andrew will be.
The reports are that King Charles has vowed to protect Beatrice and Eugenie.
To be simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, with no letters after his name, no styles before his name, and to lose those military connections as well will really sting.
He's entitled to do what he wants, and maybe there's some plausible explanation.
But it's just the attachment and the fact that he's so precise on where he needs them to be.
Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles has formally initiated a process whereby his younger brother will now be known simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, stripped of the royal styling he's held his entire life. He gave up his other titles earlier this year, including the Duke of York, after facing persistent questions about his private life and associations. A former aide described Andrew as volatile and unpredictable, adding bluntly, "You could hear him shouting before you actually saw him approaching." Even his former personal protection officers reportedly noticed the same behavioral patterns, an arrogance that made him genuinely hard to deal with professionally, and a hair-trigger temper that could surface over the smallest, most trivial details. In an environment where everyone was expected to follow strict royal protocol and maintain dignity, Andrew apparently had his own set of rules, and they were reportedly far stricter and more bizarre than anyone outside the household could have imagined. Among the strangest and most frequently discussed routines described by former palace staff was Andrew's well-documented obsession with his teddy bear collection, which has become almost legendary among royal household workers. According to multiple credible reports from different sources, he owned approximately 72 stuffed toys, all meticulously dressed in various sailor suits and military uniforms. Each morning without exception, Staff were required to arrange them on his bed in a precise order from largest to smallest before he entered the room. If a single bear was misplaced or positioned incorrectly, staff risked being publicly reprimanded or worse. Royal author Tom Quinn released a book examining the lives of staff working at royal palaces, discussing what it's genuinely like being a maid or butler to members of the royal family. Unsurprisingly, some of the most bizarre and troubling accounts in the book concern staff who work directly for the Duke of York. To make matters even more absurd, new employees reportedly underwent specific training sessions just to learn how to arrange the teddy bears correctly, according to Andrew's exacting standards.
They all used to belong to his daughters when they were little, and they've all got, they've all got memories, or maybe he's got attachment issues.
He says accusations about him have become a distraction from the royal family.
What's happened with Andrew losing his title and now her losing Duchess of York, it just proves that the York brand is totally toxic.
This is the worst look Fergie has ever had.
Andrew Windsor is spending his last weeks at Royal Lodge ranting to himself.
Fergie people are actually worried about. I think her mental health is really at a low ebb.
There is a no-holds-barred, warts and all tell-all story waiting to be shared with the world.
Does he cuddle them up at night? Does he need them to keep his bed warm?
A laminated diagram was kept permanently on the bedside table to show the exact placement of every single toy. One former security guard who personally saw the diagram said it genuinely resembled a military battlefield layout with positions marked precisely. Every evening, the bears had to be carefully removed from the bed and placed around the room in the same pre-approved pattern, including a specific group that had to be stacked carefully inside the unused decorative fireplace. To the outside world, this might sound absurd or even comically eccentric, but for those actually working inside Royal Lodge day after day, it was simply part of the exhausting daily routine, one that reflected how controlling and particular Andrew could be about his surroundings and how he demanded absolute compliance from everyone around him. Staff members recalled consistently that Andrew's household felt more like a regimented military base than a comfortable home. There were rigid rules for absolutely everything: how his clothes must be folded, how his breakfast must be served and presented, even how his shoes were to be lined up in the closet. He was said to scold staff publicly for minor errors and dismiss anyone who dared to challenge him or question his instructions. One insider stated bluntly, "He treated people like they were beneath him. You were there to serve, not to speak or offer opinions."
The affairs of the royal family tells you that we are living in quite bizarre time.
Ever-evolving soap opera, that is, of course, what's happening over at Royal Lodge.
They shouldn't pay for the sins of the parents, clearly, but I wouldn't expect them to have any front and centre row. Don't expect to see them on the palace.
It looks very sort of creepy to think of a grown man, not with one teddy, but that kind of fanatical collection of teddy bears.
Several charities have cut ties with Sarah Ferguson. This is because of an email she reportedly wrote to Jeffrey Epstein, calling him a supreme friend.
She believes there are dark forces out there. It's really got echoes of the Princess Diana era.
Fergie's Epstein lies exposed in bombshell email.
King Charles is battling with Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson to convince the Yorks to move out of the Royal Lodge.
There were some genuinely strange requirements. Staff members have confirmed that Andrew is obsessed with his teddy bear collection, owning approximately 40 to 72 stuffed animals that must be assembled and arranged perfectly every single day. Staff are reportedly given a detailed chart showing exactly how to arrange Prince Andrew's teddy bears on his bed each morning. Even senior royal aides privately admitted that his temper was well known throughout the palace system and that many experienced staff would actively prefer to work for literally anyone else in the royal family. At Royal Lodge specifically, the tension was constant and palpable. Workers described a heaviness in the atmosphere, with everyone carefully watching their words and perpetually waiting for his mood to turn without warning. One former member of staff summarized it perfectly. "You never knew which version of him you were going to encounter. Polite and charming 1 minute, shouting and berating you the next." While Andrew's behavior has dominated headlines, staff also had complex opinions about Sarah Ferguson's role behind the scenes during their years together. During her early years in the royal fold, she was generally seen as friendly and energetic, often engaging with staff in a casual and approachable way that was quite different from traditional royal distance. But as her marriage publicly unraveled and intense media scrutiny grew, insiders say her temperament changed noticeably. The king has been keen that Andrew should relocate from Royal Lodge for a considerable time, but the practical problem has been, how do you actually persuade him to move voluntarily? And quite honestly, recent events have significantly shifted people's views about whether he deserves any consideration. One former aide described Sarah as warm but high-strung, adding that her mood could swing dramatically depending on the external pressure she was experiencing.
President Trump weighed in on the whole Andrew scandal overnight.
King Charles is very keen to move Andrew and his ex-wife Fergie on. He doesn't want them to live there anymore.
The layers of duplicity and shallowness, this is a new low.
She's hoping some sort of generous benefactor will take her in, but the thing is, that's been happening now for 30 years.
I've read that Charles will somewhat try and ring-fence Beatrice and Eugenie as his nieces.
I've got to say the King and Queen may be in Rome, but they just can't escape the ongoing scandals surrounding Prince Andrew, can they?
This is a prince who had, until all this stuff happened, you know, he was decorated for his military career and he needs a teddy bear in his bed.
According to reports, she occasionally clashed with staff members over relatively small matters, once allegedly leaving a member of staff in tears after a heated exchange over something trivial. Palace insiders from that era said that while some staff genuinely found her charming and down-to-earth, others found her unpredictable and emotionally volatile. Unlike Princess Diana, who staff almost universally described as gentle, considerate, and composed under pressure, Sarah was considered impulsive, quick to laugh and joke, but also quick to snap when feeling stressed or criticized. Despite those reports, others who worked at Royal Lodge more recently have suggested that Sarah often tried to act as a buffer when Andrew's temper flared with staff. When asked what the late Queen meant to her, Sarah responded emotionally, "I think I was just myself with her, and I was allowed to be myself with her, which is such a joy." One former employee told reporters that Sarah would sometimes step in to calm Andrew down after a shouting incident, saying she appeared to be the only person he seemed to listen to or respect for years. That unusual bond defined their post-divorce life together. Two ex-spouses still living under the same roof, united by history, habit, and perhaps mutual convenience. That highly unusual arrangement, however, is finally coming to a definitive end. Following the removal of all remaining honours and royal privileges, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been formally ordered to vacate. Royal Lodge sources close to the Crown estate say he has reluctantly agreed to relocate to a private residence on the Sandringham estate, a considerably smaller and more modest home, but one still technically under royal control. Sarah Ferguson, however, will not be joining him in Norfolk. She sold her £4 million home earlier this year, reportedly believing she would be allowed to continue living at Royal Lodge indefinitely alongside Andrew. But with Andrew's lease now effectively revoked, she is being forced to make her own separate living arrangements. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.